You're good? Okay, great. That's super. Overall, though, it's pretty crazy that this meetup has been happening for 2 years. And I haven't been around since the beginning. But it's cool to come and see so many people out wanting to learn about Angular, chat about it. Okay, we're good now. So, like I said, just crazy that the community has been growing over the past 2 years, and we want to continue to do that. So we're putting our efforts in to be able to live stream as much as possible so that people that can't necessarily be at the events can still participate. Also, we are starting to live tweet the events. Our friend Abdullah is up here live tweeting from @NGToronto. So if you're on Twitter, you can follow that conversation. Also the hashtag AngularJSTO. Any kind of slides that you find interesting or little tidbits of info that you want to share, go ahead and do it. Again, in terms of building, if you have ideas for talks or if you want to contribute and talk yourself, you can reach out to me either using the @Rangle.io Twitter handle, or my personal handle is @MeLaV. Also on the meetup page, that's always a good place. Gotta shout out the sponsors. Thank you so much to Soteris. I think there's some Soteris folks here somewhere. There they are. Thank you so much. And FITC, we have some news from FITC that's pretty exciting that I'll get. Also,
we should clap for sponsors?
Yeah, let's do it. And Polar Mobile, thank you so much for hosting. So Michael is here and he's just going to say
Hi everyone, so amazing to see such a great turnout. Really, really awesome. We're happy to host and support the community. Love seeing people come out and great night of talks. Quick pitch, at Polar we build a software platform that helps media companies increase their revenue. So if you're interested in a hard challenge, come see me after. It's definitely tough, and we work on a lot of different software problems to support our customers. We don't use Angular, we do use React and CoffeeScript and lots of other cool technologies. So grab me after and enjoy. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. So more news from FITC, one of our sponsors. Anyone that's a part of this meetup group gets $100 off of their ticket to Web Unleashed, which is coming up in September. Yeah, good thing the dates are on that. September 16th to 17th. So you just use the code AngularJS for that $100 off. But even better than that is that you have a chance to win a free ticket tonight. If you sign up with lovely Glafira here, sign up to our e-newsletter, get entered into a random draw, and we'll give that ticket away. Or you can go on your own to the URL right there and enter. We'll be pulling that probably within the next week or two, so you can stay tuned for that. We also have Yuri, who's one of the speakers tonight. He's giving a free Angular 2 webinar July 22nd. So register. I hope that that's visible to you. I know the purple on red isn't ideal. The URL is go.rangle.io/Angular2webinar. It's also in the description, the event description that I sent out. So if that's not legible or you missed it, then you can always refer back to the meetup page or tweet me or let me know. So that's July 22nd. Just going to intro some of the speakers, do a quick bio. Matias Niemelä, we're so lucky to have you here. He's been working in Cali with the core Angular team at Google. So glad to have you with us. Then Yuri, who's the CTO at Rangle, an expert in front-end and test-driven development, server-side development, UX and design. He's actually lost his voice pretty badly. Say a few words, just to give him a sense, or maybe you don't want to. Yeah. We won't. So thankfully, Ahmed, who's another one of our devs at Rangle, has very kindly been a superhero, and he's going to step in.
Well, that
awesome.
must be the developer.
Sorry?
having to be the developer who actually built much of the stuff. Who should we talk
Oh,
about? So it
perfect.
actually makes perfect
So
sense.
he's actually, for those of you that didn't hear that, he's actually the developer that built a lot of the stuff that Yuri would have been talking about anyways, so that's kind of awesome and perfect. But I feel sorry for your voice still. And then we'll finish off with Nick, who's Wrangle's founder, the first developer. He used to like do everything in the beginning days of these meetups, so it's pretty awesome that he's here talking. And yeah, he did server-side JavaScript in 1997 and has 15 years of experience in web software and diverse roles and industries. I always kind of stutter when I start reading. So afterwards, I'm going to open it up to community news. But just for right now, our friends from Toronto.js are here. Taz is here, so he's just going to say a few words while we get Matias set up for the first talk.
Thanks so much. Well, first of all,
Second,
what's up with
we'll
the
catch up
speaker?
after.
Someone should have really run like an object.freeze, am I right?
I know.
Am I right? A bit warm.
It was really hard to find ice around here, okay?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm Taz. I'm the CTO of a company called HoodQ, also the lead organizer of Toronto JavaScript. I just wanted to come up here and tell you guys about a few recent developments with Toronto JavaScript. First of all, we have a Slack channel set up. So if you want to talk about JavaScript in Toronto, you can join our Slack. It's just slack.torontojs.com. We have a help room in there, so if you have any questions about JavaScript, you can go to the help room. We have a jobs room as well, so if you're hiring or looking for a job, you can post in there. We have a show and tell room, so you can show off work that you've done related to JavaScript. Secondly, we actually got 2 stickers. So it's 1 sticker for every year Angular JSTO has been around. One of these is a Toronto JS sticker. There's a Canada JS sticker, and we have them up here at the front, so feel free to come and grab them. Lastly, we have an event coming up. It's a beer script event. So that's a pub night where you can meet other developers. We'll talk about JavaScript and socialize, as well as network, of course. That's coming up next week, Tuesday, and you can find out more at torontojs.com. All right, thanks so much, guys.
All right, I'm not sure if the microphone's on or not. Where's Matthew?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Alrighty. So let's get started with the stuff. It's cool to be here again. I remember 2 years ago when we had our first meetup. It was my first time presenting. So 2 years later, I hope I'm a little bit better. So today I'm gonna talk about something really obscure. I'm gonna talk about CSS of all things. And instead of focusing, I will talk a bit about Angular, but we'll focus on CSS, and you'll see why in a minute. So that is a link to the slides, if anyone wants to download those. And about myself, I've lived here in Canada for 15 years. I was born in Finland. Right now I live in California and work for Google on Angular. And I've been doing so for about 2.5 years. It's just now I'm there in person. And we have a big team, lots of wonderful, talented people working on it. And it's a wonderful framework to work on. I'm very happy to work on it. And I'm very happy that it's got so popular and there's a big community around it. So it's really great to see all of you guys here. So what are we talking about today? Just like I said, we're going to talk about CSS for a moment. And we're going to see what's possible with custom properties. And I'll explain, what exactly I mean by custom properties and how we can leverage a lot of cool things in websites if we start to use this feature properly. But the bottom line is I'm here to inspire you guys. I'm here to inspire ideas and, to get the wheels rotating to get you guys to think of cool things to do with these custom properties. So it's kind of crazy to do a talk on CSS, right? I'm not here to teach the basics of CSS. Everybody has their own opinions about CSS. So if I were to put my hand up and say, or ask a question, who doesn't use CSS? Who uses font tags in their code? Or BG color or any of that stuff? No, everyone uses CSS, right? But everybody has their own opinions. Everybody hates it or dislikes it. That's the stuff I'm not going to talk about. And we could go on and on and on to talk about all the nuances of CSS. But what I'm going to focus on is how could we extend it in a way that we can really leverage the benefits of CSS in our web applications. So extending it? That's not possible. CSS is kind of its own hidden world, right? you have the ability to have polyfills, which kind of work, or you can have a preprocessor to sort of improve the amount of code that you have in your CSS, but actually adding extra bits to CSS doesn't really work. But if we were to be able to do it, we could leverage the configuration mechanisms of CSS and really leverage those in our applications. So this is where custom properties come in. And really, up until now, custom properties have kind of been, inaccessible by other browsers other than Firefox, because Firefox is the only one that supports the CSS variable syntax and reading those variables from JavaScript natively. But we can actually use this, and we can do cool stuff with it. We can extend CSS, we can have these configurations, we can have really flexible plugins that don't have any configuration in them, and then CSS just puts that data into our application. The favorite thing I like to do with these custom properties is to have really cool animations. So let's take a look at an example. Here we have 2 boxes, or 3 boxes, one of them's hidden, a blue one and a red one and a green one. Now the blue one has its own height, the red one has its own height. What if in CSS I could say this box is going to be the height of this box? That's not really possible. You could have some mixture of relative and absolute positioning, but if you were to target an element somewhere on the other side of the page, it's not really possible, is it? Well, using these custom properties, you can do stuff like this. And yes, this is JavaScript which is making this happen, but the actual calculations and the references between elements is defined in CSS. So we're adjusting the width and height to match this third box and the first box and so on. So what does this look like? What if we could have this in our code? If I could just say morph and match another element, and the JavaScript code would take that data, find box number 2 or box number 3, and animate the properties to that element. So we're kind of breaking the boundaries of CSS. Now, the things that I do talk about here are kind of against the rules of CSS. And CSS has its own definitions and specifications that say that no, this is impossible. But using this custom properties hack, we can do this stuff. So how do we do this stuff? How does the actual custom properties stuff work? Well, what we do is we write those properties just like this, and then we have a tool that goes through and reads all those properties and builds out a different property on the same element. And in that property, it's a JSON notation of all the properties. So we place it on the content tag. Now the content tag is for before and after pseudo elements, right? We don't see the content tag on a regular element because nothing would happen. But the key is nothing happens, so we can put stuff in, put our configurations in there, and it won't have a side effect on the web page. Now an older version of Opera would have a side effect of this, but that's like 5 years ago, and that's not even used anymore. So we're completely clear to use this feature. So if you take something like this, you run it through the build tool, you get something like this. You have content, you have this JSON dump of all the properties and the values, and then you have a duplicate of it so that Internet Explorer can read it as well. The trick here is that anything that has 1 hyphen, not 2, 1 hyphen, Internet Explorer can read. It's strange, but this is how it works. So in here we have property 1, property 2, and another property, and that's all put into this object. So then on our front end code, in order to get this to work, we run for a build tool, which produces that content code. And then we have a gulp tool called custom props that runs through it. Then we have the grunt tool as well. And what that does is allows us in our front end code to use this custom properties library and just read those properties off the element. So if we wanted to get that morphing data, we can just say, document that body, give me the morph data. So just like I said, Opera, back in the day, before it got the Blink rendering system, had an issue with this, but it's completely fine now, you're safe to use it. And Firefox supports them out of the box, so we know this feature is going to be future-proof. We know that we'll be able to use this in a few years without having to use the build tool. But the content property doesn't break any CSS rules, it doesn't break the validator, you can put whatever you want in there. The nice thing about this, compared to other mechanisms of reading custom properties in CSS, is that we get the benefits of media queries. We can use specificity to override certain custom rules as well. Unfortunately, the cascade doesn't work because it's 1 content parameter per object, but we can put that knowledge into our build tools to make that better for us. So a article I wrote about this a couple months ago that talks about this in detail. It explains how it all works. But I'm going to show a couple more demos and sort of expand your interest and your imagination to see what else we can do with this. So think about pagination on a web page, right? If we could do something like this, where we have a class called paginate, we say that all of the paragraph elements within the class are going to be broken up into groups of 5. And then when it's a media query, we're going to say that don't paginate it because mobile phones want to get everything because they can scroll up and down very easily. So using that custom properties trick, if we go look in the CSS code, this is what the compiled code looks like. We can see that it ran for the build tool, created the content. And then in here, the actual pagination works. Now there's a JavaScript tool which actually does the pagination. But the point is that the configurations are in CSS. They're not in JavaScript. And the cool thing is that, let's say we go to page 1, and we shrink this down, and we refresh. This is a mobile phone. The mobile phone picked it up, and it's rendering everything based on the media query. So we get all the cool benefits of CSS. We don't have to duplicate device detection inside of our JavaScript code. So that's what the code looked like once again before it was run for the build tool. Now, this was a hack that we did on the DOM to emulate pagination. Other ideas are that we can extend the UI. Let's think of something crazy like, say, internationalization. Now, you would never think of putting your actual translation code in CSS. It's just completely crazy. But, you know, we could do stuff like this. So I have an English translation, I have a Finnish translation, because that's the only other language I can speak. But I have that version, and then the English version. And then, inside of this demo that I have, you can see that this version ran through, downloaded the CSS stuff, ran it for the internationalization tool, which just replaced certain tokens, and this one ran as well. But if you look at the actual HTML code for these elements, it just looks like XML. So here we have the CSS class, and then we have lang, and we have a JavaScript tool which would detect those properties and do the replacing for us. So once again, we have our content, and this is just a custom property called content, which actually has the translation data, and then we can add all kinds of other properties as well, and that's what the HTML code will look like. So, with this idea in mind, having custom CSS properties, we can have better plugins. We can put all the plugin configurations in CSS, and we don't have to have a complicated mess of stuff in JavaScript. And the benefit with this is that you could have different style sheets for different devices. You could hot swap plugins, stuff like that. So here's an example. There's no demo of this, but this is just an idea. If anyone's familiar with the ACE editor, which is an HTML5 editor you can embed on a page, I believe GitHub uses it. In here, you have your theming, you enable the editor, and maybe you have a mobile version of it. But the media query is what judges what plugins are instantiated and when. Okay, let's talk about my favorite subject, which is animations, which is what I work on with Angular. With animations, you can sort of fill in the missing gaps that CSS can't do alone. Keyframes and transitions, they do what they do best, but they're kind of limited. I could go on and on about what keyframes can't support and what transitions can't support either. But this idea of having a timeline or a sequence between elements would be really cool if we could define it in CSS. Because once again, you define it in the style sheet, and then when you use that styling, you just exclude the style sheet or have a media query. So let's see an example of a keyframe, and let's mix in events into the keyframe. Let's say that in our animation, we say that the user can drag this element across the page, and once it gets to a certain amount, we just assume that the animation's done at that point. So before I show the demo, here we have these custom properties which say that once they've gone past 80% or higher, then the animation's done. If they revert back to 20%, then the animation has failed. And we're just mixing it together with a keyframe animation by itself. So I start the animation, the keyframe's rotating. I hook into the keyframe, I adjust it back and forth, and let's say I go to the very beginning and I resume, it failed. It detected that data from the CSS code. I refresh, I go all the way to the end, and I resume, it's complete. So the idea here is that the CSS is dictating what happens. For, say, a mobile screen, you might have a shorter distance to travel, so you might have different configurations. All right, so what does all this mean for Angular? Like, we're all here because we use Angular, because we like to use Angular, because we're interested in using it. What would this mean for future versions of Angular? Now, this stuff is experimental at this point. We're just experimenting with it. We're just trying to see what works and what doesn't, and trying to fill in the missing gaps and to make developing websites easier. And just as I pointed out with animations in the previous demo, the sequencing, the ordering of elements would be dictate all of that in CSS, so that we wouldn't have certain animations in CSS and then some in JavaScript if we can put as much in CSS as possible. So here, for example, we're using ng-animate. We have a custom property, and we're going to say that we're going to animate the container and all of the children within the container. We're going to apply these CSS classes, which are just simple classes that set an opacity, set a slide, a rotation, and we're going to animate it for 5 seconds, space them out by 100 milliseconds. So here's the page it loads. We see these elements load onto the page. And then when I go to the next page, it does the same thing. It fades them in. So if I actually go into the CSS code here, you can see that this is kind of what I had, right? I have a fade class. So in here, if I say that we want to have a gold class, for example, we say gold active. And we're going to say background gold. And now I run it for the build tool. And now I just look into the final style sheet. You can see that it made that content trick. Now you can see that the gold property kind of kicked in. That wasn't really the best visual thing because the gold class is removed. But the idea is that you can dictate the sequencing of animations one by one. So let's just change, instead of having gold here, let's just say that this thing is going to do transform, rotate. So now things rotate. We go to the next page. Things are rotating. But this would be really, really hard to do with CSS by itself. You'd have to have hundreds of selectors just to access these things. But with a custom property, we can just have one property that dictates the ordering of items one by one. And then we can have very simple classes tap into that. So just a few more things then. The ideas we have for Angular. It's just right now we're exploring this. This hack came up recently. I've had it on my mind for a long time, and I just made a tool out of it. We'll see what happens with it, but you can see all the potential with just having a few lines of extra CSS code to do this stuff. But that's it for my talk now. And if you have any questions, I'll be around here until the end of the presentation. So please ask me. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Matias. So we're ready for Ahmed. Yeah. Huh?
Short break for the transition.
Maybe after the next one. Not right now.
Switch mics.
Can you do that now with him? He's
Yeah.
right there.
Well,
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me at the back? No? Okay. How about now? Okay. So you were supposed to give this talk, but as you heard, he completely lost his voice. It's been getting worse today. We were thinking maybe he'd be able to, but he can't say. I can't hear him from here. I'll give you a talk today on HackStack, which is a library that we developed at Rangle. It allows you to work with APIs that are either broken, non-existent, or delivered late. When you work with a backend API, we're sure that the client usually when you work on an app, you have someone who's programming with an API, and usually it comes to you at some point. You'd rather have it early, and that's not always the case. So when it gets to you, sometimes it is not complete. Now, this is just an ideal scenario that we'd like to have, but that's usually not the case.
Desktop presenter.
What's that?
Desktop presenter.
Oh, it's not running? Sorry about that. Yep. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. So let's say you're given an API and it doesn't exist, or it's broken, or you only have part of it. We hope that you would know what a good API looks like, and you'll be the person who tests the API, so you should be able to mock it. Now here's the translation sheet that we have for what you should hear in your head when a client says an API is working now. You know that it's working, but it hasn't been tested. You don't know of it. When they say you'll have it in a few days, just multiply that by some constant, weeks, months. When they say they're working on it, you really have no idea at all when you're going to get it, or if you're going to get it at all. So prepare for the worst. Mock that API somehow. You just want to be able to work on your application during that time. I'm sure a lot of you have been sitting on the side just waiting for an API to be delivered to you, not doing much. It would have been nice to have some way to mock that API. And we did that at Rangle a few times. HackStack was really just a way for us to do that more easily going forward. So HackStack is really just a methodology that is that lets you mock APIs easily. It's not a library or a tool. Rather, it's a set of best practices based on our experience. Now, that used to be the case, but now we do have a library because people were asking for it. They thought it was really cool when we talked about it, and so we created a library. So if you'd want to mock something with HackStack, first you want to know what the API is going to look like, but that's always the case. You don't want to mock something that's going to be different from what you eventually receive, then you'll have to go back and do all the work again. You want to use test-driven development as much as you can. It saves a lot of time, a lot of effort. You don't have to actually go into every little crevice and see that things are working. You can always just switch things on and off and see how the tests are behaving. We've looked at using online tools for mocking data, but they've turned out to be way too limiting. Using a mock server, now that's ideal. That's something that you would love to do. It's usually expensive. It's almost the same as actually building the backend, which is what you're trying to avoid. So we've settled mostly on client-side mocking. It seems to work for most cases. We don't have that many pains implementing it. It's also not very expensive. HackStack.js is a library that will make mocking data easier for you. Now it is an Angular library for now. We might release different libraries for React, for just our vanilla JavaScript down the line. So if you want to get HackStack, it's in the Bower registry now. You can just Bower install Angular HackStack. That's where the repo is. And if you want those slides, they're on Yuri's website, yto.io/xhackstackto. Those links will be at the end too. It's version 0.1, so it's not the most complete thing in the world, but it does work. We use it for one of our projects, and it actually makes our lives easier. It was written by Brian, and then I joined him and added a few features to it. Brian is one of our JavaScript developers. So here's a scenario that we have. Let's say we have a birds API that gives us information on bird species. We eventually have the endpoint. We don't have it yet. And we've agreed on what the spec of the API is. We know what the JSON is going to look like. We know what problems it's going to give us and how we're supposed to handle them. Now we're just waiting for the endpoint. So we should use HackStack. So when we mock things on the client side, this is actually an architecture decision that you want to do either whether you mock things or you don't. So you have a bird service. That's the service that you interact with everywhere in your code. It's a high-level abstraction, and then below that you have an API service which handles all the level details. Mocking is one of those. And then you take your mock data. You want to put it in a separate file so you don't pollute your code. And inject that data into HackStack. And then if that is not, if you need more functionality, you can put your other mocking logic somewhere else in a separate service or what have you. I can actually speak to that. So one of our projects turned out to use an API service, Feed Henry, and their API is the API they provide you is a little weird. It's not what you would expect. It's not what we thought we'd have to use when we created HackStack. It's built around promises. So we had to write a wrapper around HackStack that took a HackStack response and reframed it so transformed it so it looked like a response that came out of Feed Henry. So you might have to do that. Don't be afraid. Just jump in and do it. You can also look at the HackStack code. It's actually not very complicated, and change it if you need to. So now let's look at our code for this scenario. So we have a birds service. That's the actual service that you interact with. It only has two methods that we're looking at here. So it has get all birds and get bird. It's clear what each of those do. And you can see that it actually goes into the API service, which is injected, and makes a call over there. Here's our mock data. We hope you're seeing that it's a constant that's sitting outside that service. We don't want to pollute our code. And yeah, for creating the mock data, there's a bunch of services you can use that will make your life a lot easier. If you're like me, you can also just drop into a REPL and create a bunch of objects, play with them, and then export as a JSON. So now let's look at how we would mock this API. So this is our API service, the low-level one. And what we're doing here is we're creating an endpoint. We create a bunch of endpoints for our services, for each of our endpoint services that are on the server. And so this one here is the endpoint for birds that is mocked. What we're doing is we're just calling hackstack.mock, and we're providing it with the mock data. That's the constant that we injected earlier. And yeah, so this is the rest of the service. You can see that what we're doing here is we're calling get endpoint. Endpoint there is a global variable that is set to either mock or live, and depending on what it says, we'll get either the live endpoint or the mocked endpoint, and we'll make a call to it. Oh, and it is crucial that it returns the right endpoint, but that's clear. So back to our bird service, you can see that it doesn't know anything about our mock, and that's the way it should be. You should not be worrying about low-level details when you're writing your services. Keep things separate. So just put things in a separate low-level service. We recommend this architecture to everybody, and we use it internally. Now, a bunch of key points about mocking. So your mock API needs to match the eventual real API. If you don't know what the real API is going to look like, you have issues that you should address before actually starting to mock the API. Talk to your customer, whoever is going to provide the API, and make sure you know what it's going to look like. You also want your mock to be similar to the data they're eventually going to get, which means it has to be asynchronous. And HackStack actually takes care of that for you. So when you make a call to HackStack, it is going to take a while to give you the response. And we address this, but high-level code should not know about mocking. That'll make your life easier down the line if you have to switch to live data. It's a very simple change. HackStack also helps you mock likely problems. One of those is a slow connection. It has latency that you can control if you dig deep into the code. And it has server-side errors. You can force an error if you want to see what happens when you get a 401. You can just ask it to provide you with a 401. We also see value in the following points. So drop connections we actually kind of support. You didn't know that, but you can make it seem like you received no response. So you can force that error. And we plan, or we're thinking about supporting loss of authentication and sending values that are too long or too short. OK, time for a demo. So this is a little app that we have. This is the live data. This is what we're getting from the API. That's our Birds app. As you can see, the scientific name is missing. We're getting the names. We're getting the age. We're getting some images, not all. So if we switch to the mock, you can see that the data is complete. We have complete control over it. We're getting the name, scientific name, and all the images are there. Also, let me show you what happens when you change something. So, anything you change here is going to be reflected in your mock. So you have complete control of this data. It'll look however you want it to be. OK. What do you do? We usually start by testing with Postman, seeing what happens, what kind of response we get. Is it what we expect? And we're currently trying to, whenever we can, to do automated E2E testing to make sure that everything works. It is working beautifully for us right now. It takes a while to do, but it is worth it if your app is complex enough. And when things change, you usually want to be able to run the the API goes down for a while. They change something and they were not expecting. You usually want to be able to run the server locally if you can. It's actually a big productivity boost for me because I have a long commute, 2 hours. Being able to work on the train is amazing. And you want to have a toggle somewhere. So you saw earlier that we have endpoints that's either mock or live. It's really easy to switch between the two of them if things go down, if things change, or when you actually deploy to production. Now, what about an incomplete API? That was one of the scenarios that we discussed. We actually also implemented something that can help you deal with that in HackStack. So what we have another method that's called HackStack.wrap. I'll talk about what it does in a bit. So what you can do when you're dealing with an incomplete API is either filter the data through a mock layer, which is what we're doing in HackStack.wrap. What we're doing is just taking the response and transforming it so it looks like what we expect. You can also use a proxy server. That's a little more complicated, but it is possible. Now, here's what you would do if you wanted to create the wrapped API point. Just use wrap instead of mock, but you will also have to provide. So one of the arguments is the URL, and the other one is an object that includes the data that we fill into the response when we get it. Here's the constant. You can see that it has a name, scientific name, age, image, and if we get a response that's missing any of those, we're going to fill it in. Let me show you how that works, or that it works. So this is our live data. You go into wrap. All the information is there. If it's already in the object that came from the API, we'll usually show you that. You can override that, but you usually want to see what live data looks like. So that's what you get by default. Now, if you want to proxy the server, that's a possible solution. Very simple, uses Express. And if you wanted to transform what you're getting, you just add more pipes in that last statement. And Yuri says don't use this in production. So that's it pretty much. If you want to get HackStack again, Bower install Angular HackStack. Oh yeah, one more thing. So I talked earlier about forcing errors. Let's go into the console. We actually will give you a window level object, HackStack utils, HS utils, and you can just go there and call some of the methods in there. So let's force a 401. Now if we go back into mock, HackStack will give you a 401, and if you want to, you have to reset that. Right now it works for all requests that you made from that point on. So if we reset it, it'll work the way you expected it to. And oh, Yuri wants you to know that it is slow because of the latency that we're adding. It's actually all happening within the browser. It's ready in milliseconds, but we're adding some fake latency, so you can see what it would look like when you actually get the API. And we find that to be extremely important because sometimes you'll make assumptions about how quick the response times are going to be, and this will reveal it to you. So once again, if you want to get the HackStack library, you can just do Bower install Angular HackStack, and that's our GitHub page. The slides are on Yuri's website, yto/HackStack.to. Will be. So he says tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thanks. Oh yeah. Go ahead.
So is that intercept, when I load that library?
Yeah.
And it seems it's intercepting all the HTTP requests?
1 second. Do I have to do anything about it? Yeah, no, I put it on. Okay. So no, it's actually not intercepting HTTP. We know some people do that, but that's not the approach we're going with. It just creates objects that look like response objects and then provides them to you. It doesn't intercept HTTP. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, so the question was, why not intercept HTTP requests with what Angular gives us using? Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. I actually have not looked at that. I don't know if Brian has. But one reason we did not, so I don't know, I can't answer you as far as not using resource goes, but the reason we don't, yeah.
No, there's a microphone. See if it works.
Microphone actually working? I don't think so. Oh, this is just for recording. Never mind. No mind. Anyway, the thing was the resource. I think I was slightly. We generally avoid ng resource because, in my experience, it really allows people to write kind of optimistic asynchronous code, because it basically, with ng resource, you get back this thing that almost looks like you've got your data, and it's very easy to end up writing code that makes assumptions about timing. So we go with approaches that really are very explicitly promise-oriented, where you get back a promise. There's no way for you to abuse that promise and try to actually start reading data out of it before that data is ready. It's extremely easy to do that with ng resource. It does if you actually use them, but it's very easy to end up not using them and to actually get data out of it directly. So I mean, we just follow a policy of avoiding it altogether. And going with an approach that's very explicitly, I mean, if you're going to be getting a promise out of it, then you might as well just get a promise out of $HTTP.
That's your answer? That's up to you. We do that where it makes sense. Like, you don't want to create a service for absolutely everything, but you want to do it in a way that makes sense. You want to have consistent, like, separation that makes sense. So not everything is one place, but at the same time, you don't want things that are similar to be separated from each other, right? You had a question? Yeah, go ahead. It's funny you say that. That's the number one thing really on our to-do list. Using HackStack, they want something very similar. But you can't do that right now. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not documented, so you have to look at the code and see how it works. The way it's just a, I don't remember if the was 100 or if we changed. So you give each error like 5 or 1 or 2, and if you give it a 5, that means it'll occur in 5% of the requests, or something like 5%. Can you what? Can you configure that within the console? Actually, no, you can't right now. You have to provide it when you create the mock endpoint, but maybe we'll do that. Is that it? Any other questions? Thank you.
So we'll take just a 5-minute break if anyone has to hit the loo or anything while we switch over for next talk.
Testing, testing. All right. All right, everyone, if we could settle down, we're going to do the last talk of the evening. So thank you for coming. My name is Nick Van Weerdenburg. I'm the CEO of Rangle.io, and I'm the original founder of the AngularJS Toronto. So it's been 2 years. This is our 2-year anniversary. It's very exciting. Our very first meetup was here in the Polar Mobile space, thanks to Michael Russo. And thanks to Matthew Potter, because I came here and saw one of his meetups here and pestered him with questions on how to run a good meetup. So, and now he's here and he's streaming us. So, my talk today is tips and tricks for building amazing AngularJS teams. And I actually came up with this. I thought it'd be a cool topic at 2 years because Rangle.io actually was started the same day as the AngularJS meetup. I created the meetup, and then I thought, oh crap, I need a company because I'm going to be doing consulting. And I set up the Rangle.io website 45 minutes later. And so they're sort of really joined together. And this was actually really hard to do. It's not really appropriate for me to do it by myself because there's a lot of people involved in building our teams. Yuri Takhteyev, our CTO, and Roop Jolly, HR VP. But I do have my own thoughts, and I was thinking a lot about this lately. Interesting talk to give, so hopefully you find it interesting. So I'm going to talk about a lot of contextual things because the background of what you want to do, your business model, drives your technology, your culture, your operations, and your hiring process, and engenders some of the risks that you might have. And then I'll talk about a few more tips and tricks that I just sort of didn't fit in everywhere else. And so this is really about Rangle and building AngularJS teams and what we see in our clients building teams. Because our mission is to help the world move to the inverted web, AngularJS, single-page applications, thin servers, and that's what we do. And we work with a lot of clients that work on our teams with us. We do a lot of training, and we see how things go. And we also jump into projects late where things have gotten sort of interesting because of the learning curve of people moving to AngularJS in a radically different architecture. So we are focused. We do JavaScript. And we design, we develop, we build, and deliver next-generation web and mobile applications. That's our hiring context. To give a few more specifics, we do HTML5 and JavaScript. We use AngularJS, React, Node, and Ionic. We want to build beautiful, responsive web and mobile applications through lean UX practices and continuous delivery while extending and coaching our clients' teams. So that's how we integrate with clients and get that feedback. We do the whole gamut of modern sort of JavaScript development. We've done over 46 projects in 2 years. We've got about 55 people, so we've worked across a diverse range of industries, and we've hired about 70 people in 2 years. So that sort of feeds into this talk. The first thing is, what is your business model? And you're hiring people to fit your business model. And there's different types of businesses in software development. It could be a web startup. It could be a business-to-consumer web company. It could be enterprise internal development, building apps for a hospital or a bank or a insurance company. It could be an enterprise software company trying to modernize their stack so they don't get crushed by their mobile startup rivals. It could be a software professional services firm, one like Rangle itself, or an agency. You also have innovative businesses versus businesses focused on maintenance. So that really talks to culture and personality. And you have safe businesses versus risky businesses, ones that are pushing the envelope. So defining your business model drives what you do when you're hiring. And that's a key thing if you want to build an amazing AngularJS team. And a lot of people who move into new technology are very attracted to some of the newer sort of ideas, new startups. And so a lot of AngularJS developers don't want to work in a safe environment. They don't want to work in a maintenance environment. They want to work in startups, or they want to work in groundbreaking new applications. So in defining the project and defining the culture that you're trying to hire into, that can drive a lot of the kind of talent pool that you're going to pull in. And then you have mission-driven versus business-driven companies. So a lot of people who are into JavaScript and building real JavaScript applications, they're very passionate about it. It's sort of a mission. It's a way of building software, and that really drives what they do. They're not going to be pulled into a non-JavaScript job if they're really passionate about what they're doing and pushing the envelope. So if you're hiring an AngularJS dev, you want to hire people who aren't going to leave and go back to a .NET job. That you want people that are that forward-thinking and that focused and that passionate. So Rangle.io, we have a very specific business model. This has driven our hiring. Every other company's different, but we only do JavaScript, we only do Agile, we only do test-driven development, we only do clean code and software engineering-driven projects. We don't do microsites, PHP or otherwise. As we've grown, we've moved on to other processes and we've standardized on them as well. We only do continuous delivery, if not to live production, to staging. So that one's still a work in progress. We only do lean UX, so we don't do large 7-week, 8-week UX projects. We do short, focused UX projects, and then we go into development. Now, this has a huge impact on the type of development team that you're building. You want to hire amazing AngularJS developers. You're probably moving into an agile environment. You're probably going to be wanting to learn and validate and make changes. Well, if you're doing a lean UX process, and this means that you're doing UX as needed, the user experience design, and you're not creating full specifications to do specification-driven development, you need developers that will engage with the client, will engage with the problem domain, be passionate, want to learn about what they're building, learn about the business, and incorporate that into the discussion with the product owner and into what's being built. And you can go the gamut of having a software delivery team that requires a spec that's like 100 pages thick to one that's happy to have single lines written on Post-it notes slapped on the wall and then have an engaging development talk with the business and read about the industry, work with their teammates, remove obstacles, and move forward in delivering software regularly. That's a different personality, it's a different sort of perspective, and that's a very difficult thing to actually hire for, and it's also a difficult thing to onboard for because it's easy to sort of slip into sort of project-driven, waterfall-oriented projects, even if you think you're agile. So that gets into training and onboarding, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So you're hiring for this, so we're talking about building an amazing AngularJS team, but we also need to be working in operations and onboarding and internally to make sure that everybody is connected and on the same page. We only do modern JavaScript, which means single-page applications that are mobile and UX-driven. We only do 2 to 3 JavaScript technologies. At the moment, it is pretty much Angular, React, and Node. We're very mission-driven. We're about the next generation web and JavaScript, and people come work with us because they're passionate about that as well. And we're very customer-centric. It's about finding solutions for customers. So some people are technology-centric, and they want to build cool stuff, and they want to be told what to build. Other people are very customer-centric, and they really want to find the solution to the business problem for the client or the team that they're working with. So there's a lot of nuances in this that define who the company is and what kind of people will work well with that company and be amazing, because some people will be amazing in one culture but not in another. From a technology perspective, obviously you want an AngularJS developer, you need JavaScript, right? If you want to be doing AngularJS, you're probably adopting just a whole slew of modern web development practices. And if you don't account for those, you're going to hire people who are going to get disillusioned very quickly because they're going to see what you're building with Angular and it's not going to match to all the best practices that are being sort of promoted and discussed on the web. So if you have an AngularJS dev that you've just hired and you tell them, forget about testing, they're going to be pretty traumatized, and it's not going to be great for your long-term sort of health of building your team. Clean code. So you use Angular to build large applications. Large applications incur technical debt and then suffer for it. Small applications don't. So a lot of JavaScript developers have learned to work on server-side driven web applications, and their JavaScript is really constrained to a single page, which means that it's not a large application. It doesn't matter how much server-side code you have. It doesn't matter if it's 1,000,000 lines of code. Most of your JavaScript is running in a single-page context, and it's not doing a lot. So you can write fairly crappy JavaScript code in a traditional server-side application, Rails application, toss in a whole bunch of jQuery, and it's going to work, and you're not going to suffer that much. That doesn't apply anymore with Angular. You need clean code. You need really, really good software engineering principles, and you need passion for that, and that comes from experience and really being bought into that concept of not accumulating technical debt. Obviously you need some HTML and CSS, but in the Angular world you can really divide your team into a lot of different roles. You can have your JavaScript developers working almost entirely in JavaScript all of the time. and they can be working with a front-end HTML and CSS team. You could have HTML and CSS designed and delivered to your JavaScript team, or you can divide up the responsibilities and have a service-oriented Angular dev who's looking at the external APIs and looking at building APIs to be consumed for the work, the user interface flows in the application. And you can have a CSS architecture team providing a live style guide to guide your front-end developers on how to go about building their app. There's just a lot of different models there, so this one you can sort of waver on, but if you don't hire it in all your developers, you need to hire it specifically for someone on your team who can mentor and help out in getting this working as a key capability. So this one could be split across your team. API design, that's something that you need on your Angular team to talk to backends, because you're going to be telling the backend team what to build, or they're going to really screw you over badly. They're not all the time, but you're going to have a backend team who's going to expose their underlying database model to you, and that's not what you need to build a good Angular application. You need a good REST API that reflects the domain, and so you need Angular developers who actually understand server-side APIs and how to build good APIs. You need good documentation because you're building a large app, and that documentation is really important in the front end. Traditionally, not as big a deal. It's also important for bridging the gap between the front end team and the back end team, because the documentation is what's going to define what your back end team's going to deliver 3 months later than they were supposed to while you're working on the front end. That's sort of a tie into the earlier talk. So, learning. Obviously, a lot of new stuff going on. So your AngularJS devs are probably, if they're new to it, they're learning about testing, they're learning about clean code, they're learning about DevOps, they're learning about continuous integration. There's so many things that go into a new Angular project, it's quite overwhelming. And people usually struggle enough just focusing on Angular that stuff like the testing gets done sort of poorly. So you want to hire for the skills or bring in those external skills in terms of training, or have mentors on your team for different areas. So if you're putting together a team of 5 Angular developers and you can get someone who's a CSS wizard, and if you can get someone who is a HTML wizard, and someone who's an API wizard, and someone who really understands documentation and API design, they can all work together and you have that base of knowledge. If not, you have to learn it. Teaching, so sharing knowledge, problem solving, because you're doing new stuff, and user experience. So most Angular projects are geared towards new mobile applications or fixing user experience issues in older applications. One of the things that's really driven Angular's growth is the mobile revolution, because people have to rewrite their front end to support mobile, and the user experience revolution. Companies are all going crazy hiring UX designers because their software experience sucks. And so you have the UX revolution and the mobile revolution, and that forces companies to pick a new framework, and that typically is Angular or something similar. And that's why it's really disrupting across all industries, including older industries that are usually slower to change. And then, of course, agile development. So if you're moving to all these things like continuous integration, continuous delivery, and you're moving to agile at the same time, and this is often the case, especially you're trying to do, you may have done agile for a few years, but now you want to do it right, and you want to do it in a continuous delivery pipeline. It's very hard to get sort of everyone focused on building very small features and delivering them frequently and handling the pull request cycle to get that done quickly. There's some really key capabilities that are required there on an AngularJS team as well. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of friction and a lot of struggle to actually get the process working fluently. So for technical roles, there is a variation. So we now have this concept of a middle stack developer. This is the person in your Angular team who is building out the services that talk to all the backends and creates a nice service architecture that's then injected into your Angular controllers. That has a huge impact on building out a large Angular application, having it be scalable, having it handle asynchronous data correctly, having it handle updating data across multiple components. A lot of the things that are driving, large, complex, modern applications. So you have that concept of that service developer. You have an HTML developer, which overlaps with UI designer and UX roles potentially. You have a CSS services architecture role. CSS, getting CSS screwed up on a large new single page application with Angular can be a massive impact on your progress and your velocity. Bad CSS can impact your overall team productivity, and I'm making this number up completely based upon my intuition, but 30% potentially, because things kept breaking all the time. Like every time you make a change, something breaks, something breaks. Every time you want to add a new feature, you got to decipher this complex mess of CSS. And there's just a lot of innovation going on in the CSS space with BEM syntax and different ways of constructing it. And they have different levels of fit depending on the scope and size of your project. It's a technical role that you need on your team. Potentially a Node developer, a lot of Angular projects benefit greatly by having an application service layer. So even if you're with a Java team or a .NET team, instead of leveraging their APIs, throw in a Node layer. That Node layer will translate those really crappy APIs that weren't built for single-page applications into nice document-oriented APIs for your front end. You can also inject lots of cool scaling things like Redis and whatnot there. And generally, because there's so much going on in the front end, full stack development is really starting to die, in my opinion. Hiring for full stack Angular developers, it's great if they have full stack experience previously, because you need that server-side software engineering experience with Ruby or Python or another dynamic language. But to try to work across the full stack with Angular and CSS and Node, or not well, Node or whatever, it's a huge, huge cost and impact. And with that sort of clean separation of a REST API separating the two, you can build to that REST API contract, and you can use something like the library that was presented earlier to decouple your front-end development from your back-end development, and you'll have greater velocity and less sort of drag on development because you're not switching contexts and hopping into the back-end. However, if you're building a new team, you generally want to hire generalists and specialize as you grow. As you grow, you things like actually have a pure CSS architect, a pure HTML developer, and compose your team that way. But on a small team, these are all roles that need to be sort of functional. So you want to look for people who can actually handle most of them and then specialize. It really depends on what team size you're targeting. If you can separate these and you're hiring for a bigger team, that gives you a lot of flexibility because you can find stronger skills and some specializations and assemble those onto a team. The other big thing is JavaScript. Real JavaScript or big JavaScript or system level JavaScript. It's not decorative. You're not making a page pretty. It's not a small code base. It doesn't work to cut and paste it from Stack Overflow like you can do with what I used to do with jQuery. I wanted something cool. I'd go find the jQuery plugin and toss it in there. You really have large code bases. There's a lot of functional thinking in the way that Angular is constructed and JavaScript's constructed. And so getting people who understand that, who are passionate to learn that, is really important. It's a software engineering sort of approach to, clean code, tests. And so, for a tip, hire for dynamic and functional passion. If you can't find that Angular developer who actually has that clean code, testing, sort of large code base, functional thinking experience, hiring someone with 10 years of JavaScript who's only done jQuery is going to kill you, unless they're brilliant and they learn extremely quickly and they can find people to learn from. You'd be better off finding a really, really good Ruby or Python developer and training them in JavaScript and giving them some time to ramp up, or go for a mix. You can have someone who really knows JavaScript but not large code bases, someone who comes from a Python or Ruby background and knows how to do really good code, and they can work together and train each other and mentor each other. So moving to Angular risks, system level JavaScript's new, people don't know it. Server-side development is not functional, so it's really object-oriented in most cases, so it's a big shift. Front-end developers aren't software engineers typically because they're working in smaller code bases and don't have those constraints. Testing and DevOps are usually new concepts, and I'm talking about what we've seen across a wide variety of clients and projects. These are really hot topics in the industry, but most people are just moving into them now. Clean code is really quite a new concept. A lot of people are, that's a big movement, but it's not really there yet in terms of really, how important it is to avoid technical debt. And Angular projects really hit a wall if you incur technical debt, because people don't understand how to construct their application logic in a more functional way, in a modular way, to compose business logic. They don't know how to separate concerns. They dump everything in controllers. They cut and paste code. They don't refactor into services. And you can you'll fly along for the first 2 months, and then your project will come to a screeching halt. And that happens a lot. It's because the wrong principles have been used, and technical debt is accumulating quickly because people are rushing to finish this project, and they don't really know the wrong road, and the pain hits later. So understand the scope of the role change is the tip here. The other thing I would add is Agile is a new concept. And I put a note here asking me about hiring Scrum Masters. We provide full teams, so we have Angular devs, we have Scrum Masters, we have QA, we have testing, we have designers. And of the 50 or 60 Scrum Masters that I've interviewed, most of them sort of look down at the ground and shuffle their feet if you've asked them if they've done real Scrum. And it's always a hybrid, right? It's always really, because it's the management team doesn't get it. They want guarantees, they want a Gantt chart, and they try to do Agile, but they're really doing stand-ups. It is cargo cult Agile. It's not adaptive. It's not removing issues, and it's a new concept. No matter how for almost all teams, and so that's been one of our challenges is really getting people on board with proper Agile, and then hiring Scrum Masters who really understand Agile on a deep level, and getting clients to understand Agile. And so this is another risk, and it's another huge influence because you're trying to do testing, you're trying to do DevOps, you're trying to do functional development, you're trying to do system-level JavaScript, and you're trying to do Agile properly, which continuous delivery actually does pressure you to do. So lots of risks. Oh, and I started with that stuff, and then of course Angular and single-page applications are new. So there's all these things. So building an amazing AngularJS team, you've got to mitigate these risks across your team and across your hiring to really get the right team. So culture, talked a little bit about this, technical or customer focused, business or mission focused, process or communication focused, fixed or exploration focused, diverse or not, in many different dimensions, and awareness and actions to drive diversity. So some developers are really great on the technical side, some are great on the customer side, some have both. Diversity is a powerful influence on effective teams, so that's a really important consideration. What kind of Angular dev you hire, whether they'll be awesome or not, depends on the mix of the team and the considerations of your particular culture. The other thing is, what do people care about, and how does that drive culture, right? So do they care about the customer business? Do they care about finding the best solution? Do they care about the value of the solution? Do they care about their team? Do they care about the craft? Do they care about their profession? Are they really, truly software professionals who really want to master their craft? Do they care about the social impact of software? Are they really excited to build software, the coolest thing that's really advancing human society? Do they care about the social footprint of your company, about diversity and bringing on other types of people and creating that mix? Do they care about your company? And do they care about the mission of the company? So this is a fairly long list, but in hiring people to be an amazing Angular developer, it's really about team, and a lot of those things will be based upon your culture. There's a new Scrum book by Jeff Sutherland called Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time, and he quotes some research that's been widely published, and the best developers are 10 times more productive than your average developer is a well-known sort of quote, but he also references other research that the best teams are 1,000 times more productive than average teams. And so if you're really thinking about what is going to really drive your AngularJS productivity, it's not just about finding that one AngularJS guy who knows it inside and out, but it's about finding that mix on that team that'll work together, will communicate, and will drive your project forward. On diversity, I thought I would talk a little bit about this. At Rangle, we have a sort of a significant shortfall in women developers. And this was something that we didn't really look at closely, or I should say I didn't look at closely, because when you start a company, for the first couple of years, your goal is survival, and you're just trying to get through the next week and the next payroll, and you sort of have the best intentions, and then you see what you have on your team, and you realize that you've really missed a mark somehow, and you sort of look how you can start to take actions to correct for that. The other thing is when you hit, we hit 50 people and people don't really give you any leeway anymore because you're a real company and you really should be taking care of these kind of things, right? So I find that, when you're 20 people, people are just amazed that you're still in business. And at 30 people, they're still amazed that you're in business. And then when you're 50 people, it's like, you're really fucking up. You should be doing a better job now. It's like 50, bam, 49, it's like, yeah, great, you're still in business. 50, you're a fucking loser and you're not really doing a good job. And why aren't you doing a better job? And it's fair, right? Because 50 is a corporation, you're a certain size, and now you do have the capacity, the time, and the ability to invest in doing things right. So I'd like to ask Amanda to speak about our women's conference contest, because she and Mila and our team in marketing put it together and ran it. So I can't take any credit for it.
Okay, so I don't know if I'll be picked up on the live stream microphone, but...
Oh, wait. I forgot about that.
Thanks for the intro and for also supporting this contest that we ran. So we offered women who code, female developers all over the States and Canada, a chance to attend Angular U, a conference in San Francisco that took place this week, Monday and Tuesday. Rangle was sponsoring the conference, and Yuri, our CTO, did a talk, and we wanted to get more women there, so we had a contest. It was pretty simple for women to enter. They just had to tell us why they wanted to attend and how they're working with Angular, what they're passionate about in their project work, and we had 148 entrants, which was pretty great, and there was a lot of enthusiasm. We got some media coverage, so from a marketing perspective, the contest was great for Rangle, for our brand to be aligned with this movement of diversity in the tech industry. Also, it just gave us more visibility with women who are in the web dev industry, because we've discovered it's pretty hard to hire women for many reasons. It's complex, and we really are passionate about it, not just because of the promotional opportunity, not at all. It ties back into our company culture and our goals, and wanting to have a workplace where we have lots of men and women who are passionate about Angular and all of that. So valid criticism. Yeah, this really was more about concern about diversity. We did some research, and companies with high levels of diversity tend to be more profitable. So creating workplaces where you have different team members with different skills and assets and attributes can really be very progressive and good for company culture and all the other company objectives that we have. So in the end, our winner was Elise Worthy, and she's the founder of Ada Developers Academy in Seattle, and it's a tuition-free school for women, and it's a not-for-profit, and we selected her because we thought she would have the greatest benefit for herself, but also to give back to the community of women that she's mentoring. And I think that's it. Oh, also coming up soon, Abdella, who's here, and Christine, another of our Angular developers, are doing a workshop, a one-day Intro to Angular course with women who code Toronto. And we're going to just try to do more community.
I mean, some of the valid criticism was why you're looking at diversity now. Why not look at it when you started the company, when you were smaller? And part of the reason is, like, honestly, didn't really understand the concept. It requires a lot of thought and the bias to action. In a small company, it's hard to have the thought and the bias to action. And you also don't have the experience and the education to actually really understand that. So, some of the things really are interesting because you just sort of think if you're sort of a nice culture and you got nice people working there and you're not jerks and you're sort of friendly and that seems like an inclusive culture, but it's not. It's really not at all. There's a lot of subtle things in culture and you really have to think about it. So if you do want to make an impact in diversity, you'd have to have a real bias to thought and action, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. I learned this word actually a few months ago, programmers, which I thought was interesting because someone looked at our website and says, yeah, it was a guy. And actually we've gotten more sort of hard questions from guys in the Toronto community, which is great. And he goes, yeah, I looked at your website and I was thinking you might be a bunch of programmers. And I don't want to work with a bunch of programmers. And it's like you talk about beer and foosball in your hiring ad. And it's like, yeah, we do. Never really thought about that. I mean, I like beer and foosball. I got to admit it. I grew up with a foosball table, but it is a guy thing, right? Or I mean, it's not a guy thing. That's not even fair. But there's a slant, right? And then there's the question: is culture the sum of the environment or a collection of ideas? Because if you have all guys, your culture is going to be a bit of a programmer culture because it's all guys. But if they're really enlightened and they think about it and they have a bias and a passion, and those ideas are really your company, then you that is more inclusive, but you're still not going to do a great job. And the tip there is you want to hire cultural ambassadors and agitators to really drive those ideas and also find people to lead growing different types of people in your company because they become the seed for the sum of the environment that brings in that inclusivity, right? So we have a lot of people who are really passionate about this contest and they're really driving it, and we want to sort of increase our sort of cultural ambassadors and hire leaders in different areas that will drive our broader diversity. And the other question, if culture is set, how to affect change, you get to a certain point, and this was one of the other criticisms, what are you going to do? Fire half your company and then hire more people, and it's like that's not a great thing to do, obviously. It's not fair, it doesn't make sense, but you can start really thinking about it and have a bias towards action and try to find the right strategies to move forward and invest in it. And the solution was actually easier than we thought, right? So you want to make your culture more inclusive, and you don't want just a foosball and beer culture, right? So pink foosball tables, right? I mean, makes sense. Pink beer, right? I mean, that's really wrong on all levels, right? But a bunch of guys, young guys, thinking about it. If I was 25, it's the wrong solution, and it's not inclusive. It's repackaging something, and not all women like pink, right? That was brought up to me as well. Even putting pink on that was sort of insulting to a lot of people because it's, anyway. But it is reflective of most initiatives. If you don't have, you need a bias to thinking deeply and to action, and find the right solutions. And we don't have them. We're working on it, and we want to get people to come work for us and help us work on it so that we can do it right. So, into the next, operations. Onboarding. This becomes really important as you grow past 20 people because not everyone's hanging out with everyone else. So you're bringing on Angular devs, they're great devs, and they get disillusioned and they're not happy and they're not performing and they just don't understand what's going on because they had this passion and this mission and things just really, they don't get connected to the culture and the way things work. There's a lot of different dimensions to teams working together effectively. And if everyone's working together, you have a lot of tacit knowledge being shared at the water cooler, that works great. You get past 20, it gets harder. You get past 30, 40, 50, it changes radically. I'd say past 50, this is as important as hiring so that people can come on board, understand your norms, get excited about what you do, understand how everyone else is thinking so it's easier to interact with them. And there's a lot of terms that have a lot of different meanings. Even test-driven development, there's so many different ways of doing it. Agile, there's so many different ways. This needs to be budgeted for, and it drives future culture direction. So, the onboarding thing for building your amazing AngularJS team becomes more and more important, especially in a large organization. If you even have like a skunks work and you get to hire 5 great guys and you're going to work on the small team, there's just going to be a lot of influence still from the external culture in your organization. And so onboarding and maintaining your direction and focus will be important. From a hiring process perspective, you want to have a hiring team, not just do it yourself, and have a hiring strategy. So one of the things that's worked well for us is that we have multiple people working on the hiring process. So early on it was myself and Yuri interviewing everyone. Now we've brought on HR, we have more senior developers, and so we have a hiring process that really gets a lot of input and gets good coverage. I would say my number one strategy for hiring a great team is hire a CTO with a PhD from Berkeley. So Yuri, so hopefully you can find one. I hear they're sort of rare, but no, I mean, so having people who really know the industry, are really passionate about software, who can really bring people in who are going to be working at the next level. HR person, so I mean, he's really upped our hiring. I was just trying to be nice. You don't have to clap. I mean, it's really, HR is an art in itself. I worked with Rupert at a previous job, and he's a true web development sort of enthusiast and professional, and into the whole, business side of web development and the market. So, and that really drives culture. So when people come in, they're seeing what the face of your company is. That drives a lot of the hiring process as well. So those were some key considerations, and then onboarding again. I don't know what I did there. Oh. So risks. Culture becomes the people that sit next to you when starting, if you're not really doing onboarding and training. Misalignment of management outlook and communications can be very confusing. Not staying in tune with people's evolving needs over time. That's a really big one, because people join and they're a junior dev, and 12 months later they're quite awesome, and they haven't really been recognized in your company as being quite awesome, and they have different needs and they want to learn and grow in a different direction. Then not actively exploring and embracing diversity. And one of the other things is a regression to the dominant norms in a company. So you have a great company, you've got 30 people, you hire 5 people, there's a certain sort of new vibe in the culture, and that drives some unfortunate maybe regression. That didn't happen to us, but there's like a tendency to have culture shift over time depending upon what groups join and are really active in a company. Final tips and tricks. Sort of the things that I've been thinking about and sort of building out the team as we get bigger is you really need to empower culture mandates to a diverse group of employees that reflect where you want to go. So I'm not going to change Wrangle's culture. I don't have the ability to do that, but I can be very passionate about finding people to join the company and drive changes in our culture and help us drive our diversity initiatives. So it's something I got to give to other people. And I think hiring people to carry out cultural mandates, not just business ones. So senior women mentors, instead of just technical leaders instead of just technical leaders. We've hired some people who turned out to be amazing cultural ambassadors and who are all over, diversity and holding internal meetings and getting people's opinions and really promoting those ideas. And that really drives culture. And it's not a mandate, it's not a slide deck, it's not a stupid talk like this. It's people actually being really passionate and working, in your company. So, and then that allows you to really build that great sort of team that you're looking for. You want to model the key skills that you're looking for and test for those, of course. And you want to be I got this one twice. I don't know what happened there, but anyway. So that was my talk on building amazing Angular teams, sort of, and a reflection of personal experience. I wanted to be relevant and authentic based upon what we've seen in the Angular market with our customers and our own sort of efforts over the last couple of years. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. If not, thank you very much. Yeah.
Up until February, for about a year and a half, I worked with an agile group. And as you said, there were scrum masters that did stand-ups, and essentially people were rewarded for getting bloody fingertips. And that was really where the emphasis was. And the result was, my role there was to write automation code. Write automation code, and ended up doing a lot of testing. Sort of felt like a street sweeper, running behind these people. But the result was code that was really bad. And after it was deployed, bugs kept coming back more or less indefinitely. So I'm just really glad to hear the emphasis on that. I think in today's fast-paced age, people think that to be productive, you have to have your hands on the keyboard all the time, hammering at it really loudly. It's often way more productive to take your hands off the keyboard and talk to your peers and think about what you're doing. And it does help to have, I'm sure, to have a PhD from Berkeley to encourage people to think about what they're doing before they do it. The other thing I wanted to say is that I think this is implied in what you said very strongly, but you didn't explicitly mention it, and that is a continuous improvement for the staff and for their skills, some kind of explicit attention and time and budget and money towards continuous improvement for all your staff. I'm sure you've got that built in, but again, those two things were really lacking in the environment that I was in, and they're paying the price for it. So I really like where you're going and what you've done, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
What is the dynamic of Rangle.io between the teams that you build and the client? Are they in direct communication? Is it a active, healthy, or do you have liaisons, mediators, and how do you build teams that work best with certain clients?
Right. So a lot of it depends on the on the client, because we're very focused on what we do. We have clients who come to us who are looking for an agile, clean code-driven, software engineering-based company. So they're already wanting to work in that model generally. So we're not really fighting the battle that a lot of people experience simply because of the self-selection of people who come talk to us. What we try to do is simplify the interface with clients. So they're the product owner, and they're providing us the backlog of features. Because we're an agile shop, we think it's really important to have all the people on the team communicate with the product owner. And so everybody is client-facing in the company. And we try not to have liaisons between the team and the client. A lot of the communication and the trust relationship, because we're an agile company, we focus on the continuous delivery process and the frequent delivery. So if the client gives us a backlog of features, they could give us post-it notes with a single word. If we're having really great conversations with them and we can turn those post-it notes around and deliver the feature to them a few days later, and they see they got the feature they wanted, now we have a communication level that works between us and that product owner. If they're having trouble describing to us what they want, then there might be more detailed specifications. We still want to turn it around quickly because that's the way we gravitate to the sort of the common understanding. So
it'd be fair to say you set a small scope from the get-go, meet those expectations, but build from there constantly.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, so I just want to get your opinion on two quick issues. First is, what's your opinion of TypeScript? That's a project that aims to really enforce clean code and allow you to kind of really modularize and work with large JavaScript applications.
Yeah, I recommend watching Douglas Crockford's talk from Angular.io earlier this week. It was pretty awesome. I personally love not having types, and I'll give you a quick answer on that. I used to be a Java solution architect, and I was a C++ developer, and then I moved into Ruby, and I just loved the concise expressiveness of not having types. And with unit tests, I didn't see there was a lot of value. I can see, though, that in more complex declarative programming models, types and annotations become very helpful for certain aspects of your project. And I'll give credit to Yuri. Yuri's the one who sort of brought this up specifically. But the problem with TypeScript is people are taking JavaScript and they think it's a lovely functional language, or that is a lovely functionally oriented language, and they start trying to do everything object-oriented, and they're not using functional composition and leveraging the strength of JavaScript and sort of that model of building. And so it's really about types and using types for certain aspects of what you're trying to build and still using the strength of JavaScript for other aspects of it. And unfortunately, it's hard to handle that from a cultural perspective. So I think TypeScript is actually pretty awesome. It adds a lot of value. I think it's going to do really cool things for Angular too. I'm just worried that culturally the industry is going to get completely screwed up over it because of that sort of reintroduction of a Java-like sort of looking type of syntax. So.
Employees, how do you kind of balance the challenge of letting them use the tools that they're familiar with getting them to use tools that interoperate with the rest of the team?
I think everybody who's keen on Angular is already keen on the tool chain. We haven't ever interviewed someone who came in and says, I need Visual Studio, please. I haven't seen that, honestly. A few clients I have, but generally people come. We actually do bank training, and they asked us to teach them Sublime Text. So, I mean, they were an Eclipse shop or a .NET shop, and they wanted to learn Sublime Text because that's what you're seeing in all the videos. If you're in, it's like it's a movement to, really automating the front end of the web development. You have Gulp or Grunt, and you have Sublime Text, and you have, Vim, and it's the tool chain is really progressive and has a huge impact on continuous integration, continuous delivery, and DevOps. And there's so much passion around that. I think most people who are into Angular and this sort of modern web development are into that as well. So we haven't really seen that.
All right, thanks.
Well, congratulations for building your company to this far. It's really inspiring to see the idea of the concept that you expressed for a Wrangler to go and do so well.
Thank you.
I have a question about your clients. You talked a lot about the culture that you are building, but have you encountered something that you actually had to fire your client because they didn't get to the agile development? Most of the time, in my experience, they expect huge development and a deliver that has it all. They don't want to wait or going through the process of continuous development or going to this lean approach. Have you had to make the decision, you know, guys, you better not talk to this client or maybe not engage with them because you know it's not going to be a good idea?
Usually that comes up pretty quickly in actually discussing scope and contracts. And so we got one contract back that was, went through lawyers, and it was basically that we guaranteed we'd deliver everything that was planned in an iteration. And so there was no concept of learning, of establishing velocity. It was a complete misunderstanding of Agile, and it was trying to turn it into 1 week waterfall projects where we guaranteed we would deliver the scope. And it made no sense whatsoever. And we sort of said so, and they disagreed, and we sort of parted ways there. We've also worked with clients that we didn't fire them, but we did struggle to onboard them with an Agile development process. And it's challenging, and it's one thing that we're actually working on in our business model to go a little bit beyond what we do just on the delivery side, but embrace more of lean startup methodology and working with clients so that they understand better the value of building and validating quickly, and making sure that we get connected through the product owner to end users so we can participate in setting up and running the validation of the software. Because in a lot of our projects, we rely on the product owner to do that, but that's a big step for them. And they end up prioritizing things that really didn't need to be built because it seems important, but they don't actually have a really good way of prioritizing. So we're working on different ways of engaging. All of our clients that we have signed are really passionate about what they're doing. It's just a challenge of establishing the overall end-to-end process sometimes.
Follow up to that, have you seen any change in the industry? I'm assuming that at the beginning, companies didn't approach Rangle talking about we want an Angular.js solution. You propose the technology for whatever solution they want, but have that changed? Are more companies more aware of this technology and they actually come to talk about that to you, or rather than just having a big problem and you propose the technology and that technology being Angular.js?
Yeah, actually our experience was the opposite because we started as a small company. It was just myself doing development, and I got a few projects, and I only talked about Angular, and I only was interested in Angular. So we did not actually even pitch it to anyone. We just ran into a few clients. Actually, I guess we did. But they were already knew about it, and they were already passionate about it, and they were looking for it. I mean, they were at Node meetups. Our first client we met at a Node meetup. The second client we met at an Angular meetup. And then after that, our website and our work just brought in inquiries and talking at different events. And so all of our sort of business leads were always inbound based upon us being passionate advocates of Angular and single-page applications. And so we never had to pitch and convince, either on Agile or on Angular. It's sort of our inbound sort of. Yeah.
Developer in the past 2 years. How do you feel about hiring somebody that has a C# background and that's now inspired for like Angular.js? Like, how would you treat that person?
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome because you want people who actually have strong software engineering backgrounds. So we have a lot of people who have .NET backgrounds. We have people with Java backgrounds, people with, they don't admit it. We have a few, but they keep it a secret. Python, Ruby. But the thing is the passion, right? So it's people who have done that and they're just really, really keen to do JavaScript and Angular, and they're really into it, and they've learned the JavaScript that they need, or they're close to it, or you can just tell that they're just hell-bent on learning it and they love it and they want to do it. And that's fantastic because the core is clean code and good software engineering practices. So also Java developers actually understand dependency injection and a lot of the principles that are used in Angular. So yeah. Oh.
You've introduced React as part of your stack. Can you talk a bit about why you did that and what you like most about it?
So we dealt with a few clients, and our developers were really keen on it, right? We have very passionate developers, and a lot of them were playing around with React, and were quite keen on it. One of our developers did an interesting personal project using ClojureScript and which is a wrapper for ClojureScript for React. And then we had a client who was going down the road of using Angular, but they decided for the complexity of their user interface, they wanted to use React, and they moved to a React and Bacon architecture. And then we've also run into projects where we did have a lot of issues with Angular performance in certain areas, right? It's optimizing for a certain thing, so we would introduce React in a couple of projects to handle that particular problem, but we still liked Angular overall for the application, as a whole. So there was multiple sort of entry points for that, and we ended up doing some React, and we have inquiries around React. So we have about 7 React developers now who also know Angular. And we're sponsoring React Europe next week in Paris. Actually, if anybody wants a free ticket to React Europe in Paris, we have a few spares. You have to buy a ticket to Paris and your hotel. But if anyone was thinking of going to Paris next week and they want to go to a really cool 2-day conference, you can talk to me after, and we can set you up with a conference pass. But yeah, so React's exciting. A lot of what they're doing in Angular 2 is very exciting as well. Yuri did a great talk on Angular 2 at the last Angular meetup, and he talked a lot about some of the influence of React. And when we were at Angular U earlier this week, almost all of the Angular core team has actually watched Yuri's Angular 2 talk, and they gave him the thumbs up on it. So you might want to check that out. So yes.
Just out of curiosity, do you use virtual machines in Docker for your DevOps architecture?
So we're using, Yuri could talk to that better, but well, one of the beauties of JavaScript and Node and Angular is that it's pretty simple to deploy in the basic early stages. And we work with a lot of customers where we hand off the final project. But other customers, we do handle more of the full DevOps and production sort of management. So what Yuri mentioned was that we're moving more towards Docker. We've used it a bit. And we're looking at sort of having a homogeneous environment for sort of testing and staging and for production based upon Docker, because it just makes it simpler that you can test and do everything across the same environment. So we're moving away from tools like Heroku and moving towards a AWS-based Docker architecture for a lot of our DevOps.
For what it's worth, so far I found virtual machines clean and Docker to be a pain in the ass, but I think that's so.
Yeah, I mean, it solves a particular problem. The nice thing with DevOps is once you've solved the problem, it's solved, right? So we have some really smart people. Cosmin did a lot of work on our DevOps, if you want to pick his brain. And so once you get it there and it's done right, then that's the beauty of it, right? It's a single command line, it's a single button, and boom, you have a nice environment. But it's, yeah.
In that book, doing twice the work in half the time, they talk about measuring team happiness. I wonder if you are doing this exercise in your company.
I've done it a little bit. And because I'm a little embarrassed to ask people if they're happy sometimes, but it sounds weird, but it's actually really powerful. I read the book about 4 months ago, and I've worked. I don't actually work on a lot of the project teams, but working with some of my other teams, I would randomly throw that in, and sometimes be a little surprised by the answer because they were happy, but the thing people wouldn't normally bring up, they'll bring up. And retrospectives are actually really hard to do in Scrum teams. People feel a little shy. They feel everyone's working hard. They don't want to rub people the wrong way. And that's actually a great question for blasting through that, because you can say, are things going well? And it's like, yeah, things are going well because I used to work at a bank and this is awesome. But, are you, sorry, I mean, I shouldn't make fun of banks, but I mean, the point of a complex, large application with lots of people, there's an inherent complexity there that's, difficult to deal with. And Yeah, so when you ask people, are they happy? It goes right through that. It's like, well, I thought I was, but now that you asked me, not entirely. So yeah, I think it's a great tool.
There's a tool that works with Slack. We're trying some couple of projects to see how that's going to work. Basically, a tool that's a Slack bot that basically asks people occasionally how they're feeling and then kind of gives us a little picture. So ask us the same question in a month. I'll be able to tell you how well it works.
So for everyone else, so Slack is a great communication tool, and you can put bots in it. We're trialing a Slack bot that asks people randomly if they're happy. So more or less, it's a fun experiment. So Abdullah.
So just to preface, I'm an employee at Rangle.io, so I work with Nick often. Great guy to work with, awesome, been a wonderful experience. And
Are you happy?
We'll talk later. No, I'm very happy. It's been a like amazing company. It's changed my life. It's a great place, great people, and great boss. But my question is, it's more important. It's about culture. So you talk a lot about culture and how you have cultural leaders and you have employees that you feel are very strong and great at providing this like experience for your employees. So my question is, who's your favorite employee?
Oh, that. I mean, that would be you, Abdullah.
There it is. Okay, that's all I want to know. That's it.
It's recorded now. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, this is, you can't take it. That's it.
All right.
Cool. So thank you everyone so much again for coming. Did anyone have any community news? Anything that they wanted to say? A joke? Anything? No? Oh, awesome. Cool.
I'm a co-founder of Lighthouse Labs, and one of the reasons I actually came out to this meetup is to meet some awesome devs that would be interested in mentoring. Nick actually talked about mentoring a little bit, which was really interesting. If you're interested in mentoring junior devs, Lighthouse Labs is a web developer bootcamp. And I'm looking for people who are interested in teaching part-time. It could be in the evenings, in the daytime, 3-6 hours a week sort of thing. And we teach full-stack web development. And actually a bunch of our grads are, recent grads are actually using React and Angular for their final projects. So it's really cool to have that as well. Thanks.
Any last words? Going once, going twice. Matthew Potter. Okay, so that will officially kind of. Oh, you actually do. Oh, I thought you were kidding. Okay, come on. Come on down. Yeah.
Should have just kept the mic at the back. So, everybody here heard of Maker Faire last year? Year before that? Yeah? Good? Yeah? This year, we've actually broken off into our own independent thing. We're Maker Festival. We're happening at the end of July between the two Pan Am and Panamania type things. We're back at the Toronto Public Reference Library. One of the things I'm going to be doing, obviously, hoping to work with Nick, and by which I mean actually talking to him about, and with the HTML Toronto group, is talking about how we can get things like the Angular software, Angular web apps, talking with hardware, maker communities and stuff. Software, web, socket, Angular apps that talk to phones, everything. So keep that in mind if you guys want to come out. It's free to attend, and you guys can come out to that. And if I can just plug one more thing. Everybody know Roy Thompson Hall? Yeah? It's around the corner here. You can see it basically from the window. There's a 20-foot tall swing set over there that I helped build that lights up and like plays music. So it's for Luminato. After you're here tonight, go over, check it out. All the music is all playing. It all lights up. Have some fun.
All right.
Cool.
That's so cool. And just a big, huge, major thank you to Matthew for helping us do the live stream tonight. and to Abdella for live tweeting for us. So we hope to see you out at the next one. We're actually moving to 129 Spadina in the fall, so the next meetup will probably be there. So that'll be really exciting. Excited to have you there. And so this is the official end, but I know there's pubs and stuff, so if the conversation wants to keep going elsewhere, just connect and yeah, to the swing set. All right, to the swings. Thank you guys. Thanks for coming.